All right, welcome to Verticals, a weekly business show on vertical tech and AI. I'm Luke Sophinos. I'm a founder and CEO. I built up a vertical software company over a 10 plus year run, recently exited that last year to a private equity group called PSG. And now working at a $1 billion fund called Atomic on creating the next generation of vertical software, vertical AI businesses. My co-host here is Nic Poulos. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Nic Poulos. I am the co-founder of Euclid Ventures. We are an inception stage venture capital fund focused exclusively on vertical AI. And I've been an investor in this space, and before that, a little bit an operator for about 15 years now. So, love everything vertical and super excited that we are finally given the space it's due with the Verticals podcast.
Awesome. And Nick and I came together. We said we got to launch a weekly business show specifically dedicated to vertical software, to vertical AI. Nobody talks about it enough. You know, the giant LLMs get all the attention. The giant, big, kind of sexy tech products get all the attention. And there's huge businesses being built every day in verticals. And so that's why we're here. How the pod is going to run. So every week we're going to dive deep into 3 specific areas. The first one is this week's vertical market pulse. Followed by that, we're going to invite a guest on. This week, we have an incredible guest, Ilir Sela from Slice, who's going to join us. We're going to dig deep into Slice's journey, and then we're going to introduce this week's vertical market playbook. And so with Ilir, we'll explore different playbooks. Today's episode, it's going to be unbundling the franchise because he has done that very successfully. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's vertical market pulse.
In this segment, we're going to run through what Luke and I think are some of the most interesting developments in the vertical AI and technology landscape. And today, we'll kick off with a piece from The Information just a few weeks ago. You know, there's the title here, I think, gives away most of the game, which is A16Z backs Ilir AI for, at about a $2 billion valuation. So a couple things, really stood out to me on this one. I mean, first, just the story of Ilir. Luke, I'm sure you've been following them for a while. They've actually been around for a bit, and I think are a great example of a business that, while it might have had AI kind of in the founding vision, has really accelerated post LLMs, right? I mean, you can see here in the article, last year they were doing, over 80 million. CAR, contracted ARR, which, take that for what you will, but they've reached some great scale and, have a ton of enterprise partners. For those of you who hadn't run across Ilir, by the way, think about them as AI property management. So, if you own a bunch of multifamily units and, you need AI to help with bringing in new tenants or handling maintenance, Ilir is one of the solutions going after that market.
Wait, Nick, hold on.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. How are they doing property management and healthcare? How are they serving both of those? That seems 2 totally different areas.
That is a pretty good question. So that is one of the other key elements of this, right? So along with their most recent raise, which was, I don't know, how much was it? It was a $200 million round. I think it was either this one or the last one. They announced that in addition to property management, they were going to start serving healthcare, which is a pretty interesting move, right? Because what that might imply to some people is that, hey, property management is not a big enough market. So I think the question that we've been hearing from a lot of folks in the industry is, does this mean the TAM's too small, or are they just getting opportunistic and trying to excite growth stage investors? It's hard to say. Or frankly, as maybe if we scroll down a little bit, the author of this piece shares, some investors question what the competitive mode is. You've got Entrada and Hippocratic targeting these spaces, but why couldn't a more general AI like Sierra or Zetagon go after it? I thought this was just really interesting because at the end of the day, it raises a debate, right? Like, what is defensibility? And, is there vertical voice AI that has a moat? I have a defined view, but Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's a lot of takes on voice AI today, and where's the moat? I mean, My view has always been the data set is the moat. And so while AI native upstarts are coming to the table and they're understanding industry workflows and they're trying to build solutions around those industry workflows, legacy incumbents are actually going to have the advantage because of the data moat. That's if they can get their act together, right? And if they can shuffle their priorities enough to not get eaten by an AI native upstart. So the moat's going to be in the data, is my view.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point. I mean, like I guess I agree and I disagree. I mean, there are really two questions here. One is, will the Ilir Selas of the world win, or will the Appfolios of the world, or the Entradas of
Yeah.
the world, or the Yardis of the world win? And I tend to think that if every legacy incumbent system of record, adopted the next wave of technology quickly, then like certainly I wouldn't have a job, right? Like these are not fast moving organizations, even some of the better ones. And like I have all the respect in the world for what Appfolio has built, what Yardi has built, 40-year-old company that still has that kind of market share. But I think it's valid. I think it's valid. One other point, I just want to get this in, and then I know you got something to say. This raises the question of, okay, so Sierra and Devagon, right? That's AI for like call centers, customer support. What this information article author rather is suggesting is like, could those just serve every vertical, right? And this is one area where like, I just think this is, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's a little bit naive. Like, I think everything we've seen in vertical software tells us that there is huge surface area for specialization and, building moats, like whether that's integrations, partnerships, custom workflows. I don't know. Luke, what's your take?
You and me are aligned there. I mean, the go-to-market's going to be hyper different in every single industry. The customer success motion is going to be hyper different in every single industry. There's no way that a Sierra or Decagon can do this. Workflows are different. So you and me are totally aligned there. I think back to what happens broadly speaking, every single industry is going to look different, right? Every single industry, I think one of two things are going to happen. There's going to be you're going to have monopolies or, kind of the leading vertical software business further entrenched because they effectively use AI. Or you're going to see them get totally eaten alive by AI native upstarts. And every industry is going to be different. So it's gonna be fascinating to see. But I'm with you that the Sierra, the Decagons, like the horizontal, voice solutions are gonna look like DocuSign. They're gonna get eaten alive over the next 5-10 years. It's just my view by vertical players.
Yeah. Or, look, they might find their own groove and kind of specialize and verticalize too. I mean, you got to respect the speed with which they're trying to move. But yeah, I think we ultimately find some alignment here. Well, that's a good segue into your piece, Luke.
If you haven't heard about Abridge, very interesting startup, vertical AI business. They, instead of competing against the system of record, Epic in this case, in the EHR space, they went and partnered with Epic, right? And basically launched an AI scribe, and have done really well. You can kind of see their solution here, Abridge, inside Epic, who, if you don't know Epic, crazy monopoly, has like dominated the HR space for decades at this point. But instead of kind of going head to head, they said, hey, let's partner, let's be the AI scribe. So that's played out over the last, I don't know, call it 12 to 18 months. They've grown like a weed. They've kicked ass. They've become a darling. Then recently, like literally very recently, Epic announces they're going to launch their own AI scribe and compete head on. So the question that it raises is, if you're an AI native kind of, new vertical AI startup, like, how do you deal with the system of record? How do you think about it? Do you go and partner with them, and then something like this can potentially happen? Do you avoid them? What's your take?
I mean, we wrote a little bit about this in an essay a few weeks ago, but I think it is a kind of an underinvested strategy to date in vertical AI to try to figure out, are there incumbent systems of record or just incumbent players we can partner with? I think in this case, it's particularly uniquely valuable for, to partner with someone like, I mean, Epic, just, I'm going to throw this out there, and maybe some of you have heard the Epic episode on Acquired, but Epic, founded in 1979, 50% plus market share, has only ever lost one customer, and that customer since came back. So just to give you a sense for like, how large this company looms. And it is also known for being extremely sharp elbowed around integrations, right? It's very much wall garden. You got to pay for entry. So I think there's a real question here of like, okay, can this company move fast enough? I mean, it's an old company, and like, I don't know, NPS is probably not super high, but you can't live without it. It's a trade-off. I'm bullish on a bridge, despite this. But I do think it's a big question of like, are they trying to put pressure on a bridge? Maybe buy them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. There could be backdoor dealings that are going on right now where there's a term sheet in front of a bridge to get bought by Epic. They've said no. Epic leaks something like this. Who knows what's happening behind the scenes? But it just shows you, regardless of what kind of vertical AI business you are, you eventually have to become the system of record in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, or you can risk getting eaten.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing this play out real time with one of the like biggest kind of software monopolies
Yep.
in the game.
But I think it's important to know, like, this conversation is happening in every legacy system of record right now that has,
Yep.
it has two brain cells to rub together. Is they're thinking, okay, like, who can we partner with? Is there like a number 4 player we can partner with and like eat them, cannibalize them, and or should we build this and give it away for free, right? So I think it's just like, I don't know. I don't have like the defined answer yet, but like you should really be thinking early about partnerships and competition in vertical AI.
Yeah. Yeah. And another learning too is if you're thinking about starting a business, making sure that there's some fragmentation at the system of record level, right? Like you're not going into a business where one guy owns 90% of it. But maybe there's 5 or 6 players. You can kind of pit them against each other, and that can be a worthwhile exercise. A Bridge just fought back though. So A Bridge just announced that they're partnering with Highmark to launch an AI powered prior authorization tool. So they're trying to get out of just solely being this AI scribe, right? Going multi-product, and so it was a funny timed announcement, I will say, because right when the Epic news dropped, this happened to drop right after.
Curious. Yeah, I mean, I think this is, not to belabor this one too much, but I think this is also an especially interesting consideration for voice AI because, a lot of where that excels is like pulling in data that can then be fed in and out of a system of record, right? So it's like, of all tools, it's very peripheral to the core systems of record, in this case, in EHR.
Awesome. All right. Well, we got one more market pulse piece we want to do, and then Ilir is almost here. He's knocking on the door, so we want to get him, and he's the star of the show this week.
True.
So last one, Elad Gil drops a incredible essay. If you don't know Elad Gil, incredible like solo venture capitalist guy, can raise as much money at this point as he wants, it seems like, based on all the bets that he's made. I really like this graphic though. I thought it'd be interesting for vertical folks to think about. He basically lays out each LLM launch and what that has enabled from, new company creation and really from a vertical AI creation standpoint. So as these models get better, what kind of businesses can be created, right? So you can see the early ChatGPT launches and it's very much copy focused, right? It's you chat with it, it gives you a response back. So we see, Jasper come out, very much focused on content marketers. They've now moved more into enterprise motion. GPT-4 comes out, which starts to have a lot more kind of workflow capability, right? Some agentic pieces, Claude computer use launches, ChatGPT operator now agents launches, and we see a few more, interesting categories. And I think there's a lot more than that he could have listed here. But, GPT-5 just launched. The jury's kind of still out on what that creates. What's your take?
I mean, I think there's a couple questions there. Like one, GPT-5 specific, maybe, but like I think the jury is still out on like, how much bigger that model actually is and how much that is like, kind of model routing versus like, hey, we've trained a new, billion-dollar model. And I think the general, well, let's just speak to the general vibe thus far in online conversations is that it's not,
performing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
just
performing, it's at least to expectation, right? Like,
yeah, that's
it's,
fair.
I mean, look, it's an incredible piece of technology. You and I both use it multiple times a day, but it just, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you're just not going to have that like magical 10x between every model. And at some point, we're going to run into like energy constraints. So I think this is really interesting, and yes, I think new foundation models will open up new functionalities. But I think a lot of the innovation is happening at the app layer, right? Like
I
app
agree.
layer, and I would also add like the kind of call it AI infrastructural layer, like MCPs. Like data is still a big problem, so that's what I have my eye on.
Yeah, VCs are typically very good at finding the frontier, and as that frontier gets built on top of, and real estate erodes, and there's not room for new companies, they move to the next one. And I feel like we're just entering the vertical AI frontier. We've seen a couple of really interesting examples that have grown like rocket ships, but it's really been the last since ChatGPT dropped. It's really been mostly you know models, LLM companies, infrastructure companies that are sucking up all the dough.
And like look, rightfully so in some ways, because like look, there are going to be a handful of big winners, and TBD. But I think almost the more interesting like paradigm to think about here is like you had this first era that was basically just wrappers, like people that saw it early and said, I'm going to try to benefit. Then you kind of had the Harvey era, which is almost like the general agentic, like I'm just going to be the agentic platform for this. I think a lot of that like really hot, call it like Series B or earlier companies you're seeing now have really focused in on like a real vertical pain point to start, as opposed to going industry down. And like I'm in a lot of ways the biggest believer in those.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with you on there is I think the companies that have the vertical specific AI companies that have grown like rocket ship have zero to no integration requirements. Um, like Harvey is a good example of this. Open Evidence, which has scaled to like a third of doctors in the United States, I think, in 12 months, which is insane. They're basically the same interface as ChatGPT. They're just trained on top of like industry data sets. So Open Evidence trained on medical journals, Harvey trained on legal journals. Whereas ones that are doing kind of full workflow require deep integration, longer sales cycle.
Yep. No,
I don't know. We'll see it play out.
totally agree with that. But that's it. That's a good one.
All right. Well, Ilir's knocking at the door. So let's that's a wrap for this week's Vertical Market Pulse. Let's bring in our Titan. All right. This week's Vertical Titan, Ilir Sela, founder and CEO of Slice. We're super honored you're here, Ilir. Excited to dig in on everything you built. If you've been to an independent pizzeria before, it's probably likely that you used his company's software. He's had an incredible run. He's done a lot of things that VCs forever have told us not to do in vertical software. Hyper fragmented market, sub market, a lot of SMBs, tough to sell into. And he's proven everybody wrong and built an absolute beast of a business. So excited to dig in with him today. I'll kick it over to him, let him introduce himself, and then we're going to jam out on some playbooks and some learnings. So over to you, my friend.
Yeah, Luke, Nick, thank you so much for having me. Congrats on this platform. Really excited to be here today, but also to be a customer. I'm looking forward to the future content that's going to come out from here. Yeah, my name is Ilir. I'm the founder and CEO at Slice. Slice is an all-in-one platform specifically built for pizza shops. I've actually called the model from the beginning a reverse franchise model, because I think that gives you a sense for, how deep the capabilities kind of go and how far along the value chain we believe that we should go and we've gone to. And so, I can break that down at some point today, but we work with tens of thousands of pizza shops around the country. Basically, I would say now 40% of the industry, and we empower them with products like an online platform, an in-store product like a POS, although it's not really a POS, it's more of an operating system, a supply chain, and most recently, phone answering services. So taking orders by phone.
It's amazing. It's hyper cool. Nick, you want to dive in?
Yeah, thanks for the kickoff, Ilir, and I think that's a perfect entree, because I think our overarching theme today is unbundling the franchise. And certainly learning how you did that in Slice, but thinking about it in terms of just overall vertical business strategy. But I think what's really interesting about what you've done at Slice is, you're not just a repeat of that franchise model. You are allowing the independent business to, maintain their brand, to be brand forward. And Slice is really just that stamp of approval in the background. So you guys do a ton of stuff today. You've really verticalized the business. I'd love to start with where did you start? Right? What was the right entry point to earn that trust?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, I admire, all those companies. I'll give you a bit of a background on me. I'm Albanian. Albanians own a ton of pizza shops, including my family, all the way dating back to the 70s. My grandparents, my parents, my uncle, his wife, they all worked at a pizza shop called Charlie's Pizza in New York City. My uncles on my mom's side owned a pizza shop called Patios. My uncle on my dad's side owned a pizza shop called John Anthony's. So it's just like surrounded by pizza shop owners, especially in the New York area. For me, I went the tech path, have a computer science, math degree. And right out of school, I launched a tech support company. This was the sort of early 2000s emergence of broadband internet. I actually converted that business into a franchise model. So we became a franchisor and scaled it to 124 franchisees. And that was a national footprint, on-site tech support predominantly for small businesses and home offices. So that was my MBA in franchising. Very powerful model. Any market we opened up in, the local players basically had no shot because we had economies of scale and they were alone. We had shared knowledge. And so I remember one of the most powerful things about that business model was that at any point, if any technician hit a dead end in their solution, it was BlackBerries back then. So you could just go on your BlackBerry, email the knowledge base, and then within moments, you'd get a response back as to how to solve a problem. That was incredibly powerful. We also had buying power because we bought equipment, Linksys routers and memory cards and all this stuff. We bought that all in bulk. And then we all contributed to a marketing fund. And so it was just like, it was incredible. Now, it has that business, and I think a lot of franchises have a fatal flaw, in my opinion. And that is that it forces uniformity across the board. It's somewhat of a feature and a bug, especially for hyperlocal businesses. So that business was hyperlocal. The business we're in today is hyperlocal. And local geographies are unique. They're not all the same. And so forcing everyone to be the same and not be able to sort of adjust to the local flavors, local needs of the customer was actually a crutch for us. And so what I remember is a lot of our franchisees wanting to deviate from the franchise model into some hyper-local version of what we were trying to accomplish, but that was not allowed. That's not allowed in the franchise system. You can't be, the same brand with different standards. And so anyway, sold the company in 2008, and through that journey, two things happened. One, as I mentioned, I learned about this sort of new business model opportunity that we'll talk about. And then two, a lot of my family and friends that own pizza shops saw me as the tech guy. And so they came to me with a lot of questions and help, sort of requests, starting with websites and online ordering. And so I started Slice back then. It was under the brand mypizza.com, in order to create a third business model. And so business model one is independent. So you go at it alone. You have your own brand, your own product. You have to figure everything out yourself. You're the marketer, the accountant, the technology person, the pizza maker in our case, everything. Model two, franchise. The entire operating system is provided to you. It's a known playbook, known system. You have economies of scale. You have buying power. Like if you're a Domino's franchisee, you don't have to worry about a website. You don't have to worry about POS or tech stack. You don't have to worry about how do you hire drivers, and all of that is solved for you, just operating. The problem is it takes away that creative freedom, as you said. Model three is now what I call this sort of independent, not alone, or reverse franchise, or unbundling of the franchise, which is what we set out to build. The first product I built was an online platform. The reason why is because I learned very quickly that that is the first and best way to make an impact on the small business. It was very clear that by moving the customer experience from analog to digital, from phone to digital, basically, that we can impact the businesses both top line and bottom line. Online orders are significantly higher in average order value. When the customer's online, we have a relationship with them to impact their order frequency, and there's less mistakes. They're much more efficient versus a phone order where you have to call in. Sometimes the phone is busy. You make mistakes. Customers are ordering by memory. And then more importantly, how do you get in touch with those customers again? You have to kind of wait for them to come to you again. And so it's a much more sort of inefficient channel. And so once I realized that that was the first and best way to make an impact on shops, we built a very straightforward online platform, online product, basically websites built for pizza shops with an online ordering component, with this automated marketing engine behind it, kind of like emails and eventually push notifications for apps. And then scale that to, I want to say 2,000 to 3,000 pizza shops, and that's all we did. Like, I didn't think about our next products. What I was trying to do is figure out how quickly can we now scale a network, because it's only once you have a network can you start thinking about what is the next product. Without the network, you're sort of stuck. Yeah.
The idea is, okay, I'm going to basically enable folks to order into pizzeria or pizza through websites. And so every independent pizza shop is going to have their own website, and they can log on and order. And then I got their email and I can retarget them. That was the initial focus. And you did it with your friends and family?
Yeah. Basically, it was, we're going to build these templated websites, and we're going to enable those websites online. We're going to manage them on behalf of shops. And so when consumers search the shop, instead of them calling the shop and finding the phone number, they'll just order online. And so that way we can move the customer behavior to digital. We also started to print the online ordering available on their menus and all that good stuff. And so,
What's the go-to-market motion there? How do you get to 3,000?
Oh yeah, it was wild. So the first, I don't know, 20, 30 locations were just family and friends. And then I started to go door to door in the vicinity of like New York City where I lived. And then after that, just started to hire a couple of like inside sellers who were dialing out to pizza shops and getting them on board.
Are you charging for it?
It was performance-based model. It's kind of funny now, with AI, there's all this talk about consumption-based models and pricing, and it's innovative. It's actually not that innovative. We charge $2 per order. That's it. Flat fee. Any order that made it to the pizza shop, they paid $2. It was as simple as that. And we introduced credit card processing fees, I think, a couple of years later. But for the first couple of years, it was just basically $2 per order.
So if you're a indie pizza owner, probably not thinking all day about technology, and Ilir comes along and says, hey, I'm going to revamp your website and you're going to get mobile, or not mobile, but online orders. How do you help them grow? Right? I mean, they may say this is great, but like, I don't think a lot of people are coming to Joe's Pizza Shop website, right? So was there a marketing component built in?
Yeah, so the number one thing that I think small businesses need to know is that for the most part, this is not an absolute sort of claim, but for the most part, small businesses' biggest opportunity is to maximize the value of their existing customers. And so we have data that showed a phone order was, at that time, was $18 per order. An online order was $35. Today, the online orders are more than $40. So simply by switching the customer's behavior from phone to digital, you had this natural lift in ticket size because the customer now had the full menu in front of them, and they were, able to order more. They basically ordered at least one more item online. And then we also could impact their order frequency. So instead of ordering 12 times a year, they would order 16 or 18 times a year. And so if you do that across your entire customer base, your business just goes, it increases pretty dramatically. And so that's where we focused. It wasn't so much that. Now, I think the second order effect was, by having this online presence, you can now also be available to consumers who are on those channels who would not have otherwise found you. But I think that's like, we always promise
Second
that
order.
as like the second order effect. The primary impact is maximizing the value of the existing customers.
So when you would first sell into someone for whom this is a new concept, the number one thing that would get them going and want to keep working with Slice was they would get more money almost immediately,
Correct.
right?
Yep. They would unlock a new channel, they would get orders, and they didn't have to answer the phone.
Got it. And at that time, was Slice consumer facing at all? Like, did we say powered by Slice from the beginning?
It was mypizza.com, but yeah, it was basically a powered by product. We didn't have a consumer facing product, like a direct to consumer facing product, till 2017. Like for the first 7 years, and I bootstrapped for 6. So 6 years was
Awesome.
pure bootstrap.
Most people don't know that. I think most people think you raised a ton of money out of the gate. So you bootstrapped it for 6 or 7 years.
Correct.
Wow.
We got to 44 million in GOV, and about 4 million in revenue, completely bootstrapped.
Tell us about that first round. Like, how did you get to the point where you felt, hey, I want to raise for this? And, were there any angels in there before that period?
Yeah, I actually did not set out to raise capital. I had a lot of money. We made 4 million in revenue in 2015, and 3 million of that was profit. It was an engine that was just predominantly high margin, basically order processing. But I did realize that I needed more help around me to really help scale the business. Like it started to become clear that this is an opportunity to like 100x the company. And in order to do that, I went on Twitter and I tagged 3 or 4 industry leaders in the online space, online food ordering space. And one of those people is Ilir Sela, who was an early leader at Seamless, founded a company called Single Platform, sold it to Constant Contact. And Wiley responded and he was like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to chat. I was just basically like, hey, can we talk? We jumped on a call. He's like, look, this sounds cool. When you get to like 200 shops, give me a call and we'll work on something. And that's when I was like, hey, we're at actually 3,000 shops. And he's like, come to my office tomorrow. He happened to work at First Round at the time. That's kind of how it started. And it was him, Paul Applebaum, Jason Finger. These are all the founders of Seamless, who ended up getting involved pretty quickly. They introduced me to an amazing investor and just person altogether in Ben Sun from Primary Ventures in New York. And that's really how the First Round came together.
Did you go talk to any other VCs, or was it was totally organic and you didn't go pitch 10 others? It was just with that.
It was just with them. It was to get them on board. It wasn't to raise capital. So we raised $1 million.
Were there concerns with them around, Toast's rise? Because they started rising pretty quickly at that time. Did they talk to you about, hey, does this get eaten by a restaurant specific player, but not necessarily a pizzeria specific player?
Not really. Not a ton of concerns. I think it was pretty clear from then that we were trying to build sort of a very specific, vertical specific product. 1. 2, I think they got it from the beginning that the TAM is really massive, but it was a secret. So pizza in the US is a 47 billion industry. That doesn't include frozen pizza. I'm talking about, that's the revenue that passes through 80,000 shops. That's just domestic. And the pizza sort of, the operations of a pizza shop are relatively unique. Like it's not the same as an Applebee's, for example. Like those two businesses, other than serving food, they have nothing else in common. I think it was these sort of components that got them on board. But also, it was relatively low risk, I would say. $1 million. I think the valuation was $14 million, and we already had 4 million in revenue. Like it wasn't really. And again, for me, it was just like, how do I get these people on board to help me expand my network?
So they come on board. What's the value that they bring you? You still have the single product. You're at a couple thousand shops. You get some institutional capital. $1 million doesn't really move the needle for you. You're already doing, a ton.
Yeah. They introduced me to people. Introduced me to our first president, Pete Chen, who joined. Pete was then the COO of Single Platform. Incredible. Came in, basically professionalized the business. I was running the company on like Excel sheets. We didn't even have QuickBooks. Paul introduced me to Irina Resnick, who became our head of finance, and she was at Grubhub and joined and led our finance. Wiley introduced me to Jen Berger, who's still at Slice as the sales leader. She came in as a sales person, and she just crushed it from the beginning. Day one, you know, starting to sell to tens of shops per day instead of like one or two. It was all in the form of like expanding the network of people who became now available to slice. And it started to become a little bit of a theme in the New York ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, which was still relatively small and tight, of like this weird company named mypizza.com and all this great talent is going, or what is going on, like what is happening there. But that was the output of that first round.
And what year was that? That was 20.
That was basically start of 2016.
Okay. And then what's the second product innovation? Like,
Yeah.
when do you expand beyond websites?
Yeah, and so halfway into 2016, Ben, who has been incredible from the beginning and was incredible then, came to me and he's like, "Hey, let's do a more formal round." And so we did our actual official round, like a round. Did not shop that either. That was just with Primary Ventures. He came in, said, "We'd love to put in $3 million at I think it was a 30 million valuation at that point." And that was it. Clean round, got it done. Still had never pitched investors. Still didn't really know what VCs were, to be quite honest, which is kind of embarrassing, but that's the reality. And with that additional round, we realized that we had this opportunity to basically accelerate our ability to retain customers for shops. So like, how do we retain more consumers and how do we get them to order more frequently? And the best way to do that was by introducing the Slice app. Now, the Slice app, from a distance, a lot of people will say, "Hey, this is kind of like DoorDash or Grubhub for pizza," but that's not actually the case. The Slice app is shop centric. And so all it does is basically invites consumers to this app where they can order from their 3 or 4 local favorites, because that's what consumers do. They have 3 or 4 local favorites that they sort of rotate amongst consistently. And then you just do that in a way that is really rewarding and frictionless. And so we introduced the Slice app in 2017. So that was the next product. Until then, it was just basically websites with online ordering.
It's kind of an interesting consideration for, I think, a lot of B2B2C vertical platforms where, you want to be able to provide consumer value directly, but you also don't want to compete with your direct customers on marketing. But it sounds like in this case, the regional flavor of the dynamics made it so the owners didn't really care too much because they know they're just going to be alongside 1 or 2 other shops. Is that right?
Yeah, but there's also like a form of education. Like I think what happens in our industry, at least, is you have this tension where owners believe they are mutually exclusive with the consumer. So they think the customer's theirs and only theirs. And you have consumers who behave with restaurants like restaurants are friends. So like you don't just have one friend, you have 5 friends. And just because you have 5 friends, you're not any less of a friend to one of them. That's the analogy I provide. And so at some point, our education to our shop partners is that, hey, you're better off knowing and understanding who you share customers with. And so you could see sort of what's happening in your ecosystem, in your neighborhood, in your geography, versus, slice building products to fit your false understanding of how consumer behavior works in your neighborhood.
Yep.
So we built products for the benefit of shops, even if shops don't realize or don't yet know that is how we benefit them.
Did you ever get owners saying, "Hey, I really don't want to be on here right next to my main competitor"? Did you get that pushback or?
No, because
Not really.
the product experience is kind of interesting. It's like, the consumer onboards the Slice app through a shop's website. And once that happens, then the experience is oriented around that shop. Unless the consumer decides to escape, sort of there's an escape hatch to it. And let's say they're in a different location or they want to sort of follow or add another shop, then that's sort of the consumer's prerogative. But you'd still rather serve the consumer versus allow that consumer to churn and go elsewhere.
So the presentation of that app is not come on to the Slice app and find your whatever food. It's not DoorDash. It
Correct.
really starts with that single store experience.
The goal of the app is to make reordering incredibly simple and easy. Like
Yep.
our job is to get consumers to reorder more often, and when they order, to order more food each time. That's it. Our job isn't to say, you tried Luke's Pizza Shop, now try Nick's. That's not our business. There's already an existing consumer behavior in the country. There's already 47 billion in transactions. Our job is just to move that from analog to digital, but not to necessarily change the way that consumers interacted with their local shops.
And you're not taking a piece on the app that's any different than the $2 that you take in
Correct.
store. You
All
don't
the
care.
same model. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's just $2 per order. And whether that customer comes back to Nick's or orders at Luke's, it's still $2. And so we have no incentive to get a consumer to go to some other shop. Our incentive is to make sure the consumer gets what they want.
I want to get through kind of the journey from, you come out with the app, and then let's kind of talk about a few of the stops along the way before we land on today. And then maybe we go deep on some playbooks generally about how this may apply to other businesses or what other businesses you're seeing. Because, Nick's in the VC seat, I'm in the founder seat. I think like we disagree and have differing opinions on a lot. And you buck this, like Slices buck the trend on so many things that a typical VC would say that, that's not going to work. So, all right. So you launch this app. Is the app wildly successful? Or is it still a lot kind of smaller revenue wise relative? I guess it doesn't matter because you're charging $2.
Yeah, but it becomes pretty successful because within a year, I think it just became half of our order volume. Half of the order volume was happening on the app, and the other half was happening on the sort of websites that we powered. And yeah, it became success. I mean, pretty quickly, it was just so different than traditional sort of discovery apps. Apple chose it as app of the day. It was refreshing. The simplicity of it was refreshing because like you open the app, you land on a menu, your order is saved, you hit a button, it's reordered. So it's a very simple product. And so, yeah, that took off. And then that allowed us to scale because it created a new on-ramp for shops. And so now shops, not only can they on-ramp to Slice through our website product, but they could also on-ramp through the Slice app product.
Did you see people skipping websites altogether?
We started to see people skipping websites altogether, yeah. And they just sort of linked to the Slice app, yeah.
And then what's the next product?
And then I realized, actually, I knew this from 2015, one of the smartest people in the ecosystem who's pretty much under the radar, but I have a world of respect for him, is Jason Finger. He's the co-founder of Seamless. Jason, when I met him in 2015, he was like, hey, if money was no object, what company would you buy? And in 2015, response to him was Revel Systems. Back then, Revel was kind of like what Toast is now, I guess. He's like, well, that's weird. That's surprising. Like, why would you buy a POS? It was pretty clear that the online platform and the in-store platform was converging. Basically, you had these traditional POS companies, and then we had these sort of next-gen online platforms like Slice. But at some point, all those channels had to get consolidated. And so it was clear as day that we needed to launch a point of sale, or let's call it an in-store product that reconciles all the channels. That's kind of what a point of sale is nowadays. It's a reconciliation tool for workflow at the shop. And so we launched that product. We actually bought a small company called InStore, which was more of a horizontal product, iPad-based. We spent a couple of years curating that for pizza and then launched it in beta in 23, I want to say, and then officially in 24.
So this is the classic system of record debate in every single, vertical SaaS business is you start out doing something that somebody else isn't doing. A la in restaurants, system of record is your POS at the time. Was there a ton of customer friction, pre this acquisition? So they're saying, hey, Ilir, I got orders over here and I got orders over here and I can't close my books. I don't know, what's happening. Or was it, you just kind of saw ahead of, the customers that this was going to come to a head at some point?
More of the latter, because again, we're dealing with a very, like our customer base they're all very consistent, but it's also, these are micro businesses. So the distribution of pizza restaurants also is very fragmented. Like our bread and butter in terms of geographic distribution is the suburbs and small towns around the country. These are small town monopolies, basically. And because of that, they also are kind of set in the old ways. And so for the most part, when websites took off for us, it wasn't because we were replacing some other website. It's because they just didn't have one. So we were the first website provider for the industry, for the most part. And the same with POS, like most of them don't have a POS, they have cash register. But it was really important that that in-store experience integrated with the digital experience, especially as more channels started to introduce themselves, like third-party products like DoorDash or Uber Eats.
But early 2020s, they're on they have cash registers.
Even today, like
Seriously?
nearly half of our prospects are on cash register.
Oh my goodness.
You never buy pizza with cash, Luke? Come on, man.
Yeah, cash registers, and they're also phone-based today. 80% of the volume is still passing through the phone.
Leader, could you give us a sense for how like your kind of ACV per customer, even though I know it's not subscription based, has evolved over time?
Yeah, when we were working with just websites with online ordering, orders, we track orders per shop or sales per shop. I would say, we were always somewhere in the $2,000 to $4,000 per year range. We were never less than that because it was transaction based. And then when we introduced the Slice app, because the order frequency of the customer base went up, basically orders per shop went up, then that ACV basically went to like 5,000 to 7,000 per year. And this is revenue, like revenue to Slice.
Mm-hmm.
And once we introduced the point of sale product, Slice Register, and then most recently we have a product called Family Membership, so Slice Family Membership. The ACV is now for Slice Family shops is closer to, it's actually a little bit north of $25,000 per year.
What does a typical shop do in revenue annually?
It's a wide spectrum. On average, we're probably now looking at about 700,000 per year. You have some shops that are 2 million and some shops that are at 300K, but on average, we're talking about 700,000.
Is that jump from 7 to 25? I mean, that's massive. Is that basically replacing the cash register, the POS, or is that split amongst everything you're doing?
From 7 to 25, it's because we now go from just managing, for the most part, the online channel, which is, let's call it 10% of their business. And let's say our take rate at the $2 level is like 6% of that. So we're charging basically 6% of 10 to managing all of the volume, because we're now answering the phone. We have the point of sale in the shop. We provide supplies. So boxes and bags and all that is delivered directly to shops. So that's a product that we have. It's all vertical integration. It's all in-house. We have warehouses, delivery vans, and all that good stuff. And so when you combine all of that and you're serving, basically the shop with more or less that reverse franchise platform, as I've spoken about, and marketing services, then that's sort of where the jump comes in. Now, what makes up that ACV, that 25K, is a number of things. It's phone orders, it's online orders, it's in-store orders, it's supplies, marketing, and so on. But you have to basically become the industry. If you're going to focus to this level that we have, like, we've got to become the industry.
When you kind of had hit that true kind of maturity or growth point, it seems like you worked with KKR as kind of one of the leads on your growth round. How did you think about that, and who was the right partner?
Yeah, it's a good question. I met Jake Heller from KKR in 2016 at a dinner, and we stayed in touch. A really awesome person. He was not at KKR at the time. I think he was at, I want to say Spectrum Equity or something like that. Yeah, we just kind of stayed in touch. We raised capital from GGV Capital at the time. Now it's called Notable. Jeff Richards, awesome. And we were never really like this capital intensive business. We were always pretty efficient. I think just going back to like the roots of being bootstrapped. And we went into 2020, and Jake at the start of 2020, like January, sent me this really thoughtful email. And he said, hey, every year I think about what I want to accomplish that year, is my New Year sort of approach. And this year, my goal is to work with you and Slice. And so, and it was like really thoughtful. And I really appreciated that. COVID hits, stay-at-home orders hit, business goes to zero, because we all thought that for 2 weeks, everything could just close down. And after 2 weeks, we'll sort of get back at it. And Jeff Richards from Notable, who has a ton of experience in China and at the time had a couple of partners in Asia, he made it very clear to me that this is going to be a long-term thing. But not only that, that delivery and takeout businesses are just going to go crazy, bonkers. And he's like, we have to play offense. Who are the people who you think will write a check tomorrow.
Hmm.
And so I called Jake and I was like, Jake, now's the time. Here's why. We want to play offense, not defense. And literally the day the market went red, it was like after Rudy Gobert said something on TV, the NBA
Yeah.
player, like that day we got a term sheet from KKR. We closed it within a matter of like a couple of weeks, and we brought $43 million into the company, and we went like crazy offense instead of defense. And that set us in a totally new trajectory. I mean, our quarterly revenue went from like, I want to say 3 or 4 million to like 15 overnight.
If that round doesn't come together, does Slice survive with COVID? I mean, you were running a pretty lean shop. It just, that enabled you to play offense.
Exactly. We would have survived for sure. It just would have been still sort of this linear growth versus these, because like hyper growth happens in these like step change moments, especially in our industry. There's no, this isn't like enterprise where I can go get these huge accounts and suddenly my revenue goes crazy. This is a, somewhat of a linear, maybe somewhat better than linear approach to growth. But then every couple of years, you have these sort of step change moments, these accelerators. That's what COVID became, is sort of this new floor.
Luke, I know you're excited to talk about AI, as we all are, but I have one first, which is back to that really good point you made around secret markets. And what I think is so cool about what you guys have done is, like, you look at most, call it restaurant, food tech, even today, it's still just, hey, we're going across all restaurants, right?
Yeah, people think restaurants are a vertical, and that's
Right,
that's
exactly.
false. Yeah.
And I could say the same thing about trades or some areas in healthcare, where the reality is it's like 30 different verticals, and done right, they're all, 10 billion plus opportunities. You've proved that is the case with pizzerias. What is the kind of, what's different? I mean, you mentioned, okay, it's not an Applebee's, but like when you go back to those wedge products, what were fundamentally different?
I'll answer that question, but to be fair, we didn't prove how big pizza can be. Domino's did. So did Papa John's. So did Little Caesars. When you look at those companies combined, they have a $30 billion market cap across 15,000 locations that they own collectively. Actually, they don't own them. They're franchised. And so if Domino's can be a $15 billion market cap company with 6,000 locations, and there are 55,000 locations available to Slice just in the US, we can be a much bigger business, but you have to match Domino's in terms of ACV. Domino's makes about $100,000 a year per location through a collection of supply.
100,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. That's in gross profit. That's in
I think
gross.
that's all from the Domino's pizza tracker, right?
That's royalty fees, marketing fees, and then 64% of their revenue is supply. So they sell all the supplies to the franchisees. And then, what's unique about pizza? There's no silver bullet. It's a collection of things that really matter. It's speed at which you can allow someone at the store to take an order and build a pizza because the customer wants left toppings, right toppings, double toppings on the left. But when double toppings happen, the second topping needs to be 50% off. Like, who's building those details? Now, add up that detail across the whole sort of, operating system, and it matters. Like, for a pizza shop, you have a pizza station and you have a kitchen. If an order comes in and it has 3 items, it has a pizza item, it has a salad, and it has a pasta item. Well, the pizza item needs to print at the pizza station, the salad needs to print at the salad station, and then the dish has to go to the kitchen in the back. Like, all of that, those little details really, really matter. And I would say that's one. And then 2, I think brand matters. I think people underestimate the importance of brand to the customer. If I have a choice of who I'm going to work with to build products for me, do I work with somebody who's branded and speaks to the pain points I have as a specific business? Or should I work with the same company that works with a coffee shop and Applebee's? So I think brand matters, and then community matters. So how do you bring owners together? How do you bring like-minded entrepreneurs so that they don't feel alone in their experience? Those things matter.
Have you seen any Slice-esque companies pop up, whether it be in pizzas, people that are trying to copy your model, or interesting companies in other like sub restaurant verticals like sushi or
I think the most common theme, the most common one that I've seen sort of people play in is sort of the Asian food category. There's a handful of players, a company that's a really good company called Chowbus that started off as a marketplace for Asian food. It was delivery service provider basically. That has pivoted to more of a B2B platform, and I think they're doing a pretty good job from what I can tell. Moxie, you mentioned that's more for med spas. Um, I've had conversations with them here and there. I think right now they're focused mostly on launching new ones. And I think the question for them that I would pose is how can you convert existing ones? The Slice's secret sauce, not secret sauce, but like Slice's ability to scale fast is our ability to convert shops to Powered by Slice so that we don't have to sit here and just launch a bunch of new ones, although we're starting to do that as well.
is that the future? Is there a platform that powers every single sub vertical? Like the whole notion of restaurant as a vertical or healthcare as a vertical is going to absolutely disappear, and we're going to have specific technology companies that service
I don't think
every
it's gonna
category.
happen. I don't think it's going to happen for every category because some categories are too small. Now, it may happen in maybe some lifestyle business because I think you can build a lifestyle business for chicken wing vertical, whatever, maybe the ice cream vertical. I'm making stuff, but like those TAMs are too small. So pizza is 50% of the QSR TAM in the US. So it's 50% pizza, 50% everything else. And so in order to build a real, like, differentiated and just scalable business, you also have to make sure the TAM is big enough. But yeah, I mean, if I was like, looking to make build a business of like 10 million in revenue and like bootstrap and live well, yeah, I can build something for ice cream shops, for example.
Yeah, let's hit AI real quick. Obviously AI is all the rage. Everybody's talking about it. We've got, vertical AI after vertical AI player. Every VC is moving into quote unquote vertical AI because I think their fund sizes are just not at the level where they can compete with, the super VCs, if we want to call them for this segment, that can fund the LLMs or the language providers. I mean, how do you think about like AI native versus, most people are founders or they're operators and their businesses are pre-AI. Like that's just the reality. And so how do you think about that? Like if there's a AI powered Slice that starts tomorrow, is that concerning at all? I mean, how do you think about implementing AI? What's the war room at Slice look like with this particular topic?
Yes, AI native, I think, is important, especially probably in products or industries where the customer is basically digitally native. I think that's a much greater risk. Our job is to focus on our customer and then use every capability possible to build products and services for that customer. AI is no different than anything else, and we take that very seriously. But we also don't want to build AI for the purpose of AI. So, for example, we have a phone product today that is fully managed by humans because the AI version of that product has a 90% success rate, and our human products, which is human-based, is at 98% success rate. That 8% difference is the difference between a successful pizza shop and a failed pizza shop. I can't test AI on that customer, but when AI reaches the same level of success, we are building that product with a data structure that will be able to take advantage of, AI advances. That's like a small version of like what we're thinking about across the board. But again, we are dealing with a very different customer. Like there's still a lot of pizza shops that don't have a website. There are still a lot of pizza shops that don't have, point of sale, as I mentioned. And so, but yeah, AI is definitely a capability, and it's not dissimilar to the way that I think of Stripe from 10 years ago that allowed Slice to exist. Like if I had to go and build my own payment stack, we would not be here. But Stripe and Twilio on communications, and now what are the AI capabilities that we can bring forward and distribute to our customers? That's how we think about it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, we create logos for websites and all of those are being done manually anymore. No, you could just, push that through AI. That's why it's sort of like, what capabilities does AI allow us to bring to our customers, and wherever that's possible without sacrificing quality, then we take advantage of it.
Yep. Ilir has a Jeff Bezos-esque focus on the customer. I like it.
We're like, even Nick earlier, you spoke about sort of the, what VCs want to see. And I didn't build a business with VCs in mind. I never built it to raise capital. I just built it to solve this problem for a very important category. And then eventually we'll see about other categories. But how do we make local pizza shops more successful? That's just our job.
So let's leave it with 2 quick questions if we can. So last question I have, and then Nick, you can do the final one here.
Cool.
Is if you were to kind of make, one big, actually, I'm going to change the question. What is, everyone's going to assume Slice was up and to the right, is a perfect ride. Everything is great, right? The TechCrunch headline after TechCrunch headline, everything's awesome. Like, we know that that's not the reality. What is the kind of quick, like, near death, wartime, moment or story that you can share with the group? Because that's the reality of business.
What I believe to be near death sort of moments all the time, because, the reputation of the brand is really important when you focus on a very specific customer base, and that industry is a community. And so if we do something that's going to really kill our reputation, then that is a company killing moment. But I think, historically, even especially when we were bootstrapped, we would publish our websites to Google. And when we would do that, we did that at scale. And then suddenly Google decided that because these websites were templated, that they were not meeting their guidelines, and they basically disabled every single one of our websites. They basically blacklisted all of our websites. And so all of these shops that depended on the website no longer had access to the website, and we had to figure out how to circumvent that. So that there's examples like that all the time. But I would say I wake up every day paranoid that something will happen today that will kill the company.
That's why you guys keep growing like a weed. I love it.
Yep.
It's a very important last question. I was reading the latest Slice of the Union report in preparation for this podcast, but it got me thinking, what is your favorite pizza?
So there's people ask me that all the time, like, what's the best pizza? The real answer is the one closest to you. That is likely the best one, because that's what you grew up with, and that's I can't tell somebody that pizza is not good or great, because that's their choice. Mine is one that's close to where I am now. It's called Pizzeria Giove. It's on Staten Island. It is incredible. For anyone who has an opportunity to go and check it out, you should.
What is Ilir's order there?
Oh, it's just a large margarita, no basil, and that's it. Yeah.
All right.
Luke, what's your order, man?
I'm a white pie, pepperoni, and bacon.
Okay.
That's a pretty good one. I'm a Hawaiian guy, which is we're a persecuted segment. So
yeah,
right.
People like this pineapple belong on pizza. If anything belongs on pizza, if a person wants it, that's the beauty of pizza. Like how
Totally.
Awesome. Well, Ilir, thanks so much for being here, man. It means the world to us. You built such an incredible business, and it gets talked about a lot. It gets written about a lot, because I think you buck so many trends. So
Thank you.
Really appreciate you sharing more of the story today.
Of course. Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for the time.
All right, that's a wrap for our inaugural episode of Verticals, the weekly biz show on all things vertical tech and AI. Man, Ilir is such a good dude, built an incredible business. So fun to jam out with him on unbundling the franchise. Next week, we got Jeremy Yamaguchi, who is the founder, not the co-founder, the founder and CEO of Cabana, which is an AI rollup. AI rollups are a huge rage right now. A lot of them getting funded, tons of money going at it. He was very early to it. I think, 2+ years ago. He's buying up a bunch of pool cleaning companies and supercharging them with software and AI. So should be an interesting episode. I want to give a quick shout out to Paraffin. Paraffin has made this whole thing possible. Paraffin provides ready-to-launch financial products that help your merchants grow. If you're a vertical software business, you haven't checked out Paraffin, go do that. They've got embedded capital, can really drive retention, really drive revenue. And so super thankful and fortunate to partner with Paraffin on this. And we will see you all next week for that episode with Jeremy. Thanks to everybody for being here. Appreciate it.